Welcome to the NoJetStress Podcast, where we explore traveller wellbeing solutions for business and frequent flyers seeking to conquer jet lag and live healthier lives. I'm your host, Christopher Babayode, ex-flight attendant, traveller wellbeing advocate, nutritional therapist, and author. If you enjoyed our last episode with Danielle Riddle, the CEO of Inspired Travel, welcome back to part 2. In this episode, we're unpacking real-world impact of blending business and leisure travel, why it's a game changer for both travellers and organisations, and more of the good stuff around empathetic support in corporate travel. We get honest about the bleisure question. You'll hear practical strategies for managing jet lag, recovery and routines. We'll shine a light on the unseen pressures of frequent travel, especially for women and executive travellers. Danielle shares her wellness routines as a frequent traveller and the little things that make a big difference. We'll look ahead at the future of business travel and where wellness KPIs and human-centric policies are set to become the new standard. Join us, won't you?
We have the introduction of the term leisure travel.
Yep.
Some people loathe it as a term. I have nothing against it. The blending of business and leisure is a good thing. I've had a gentleman who ran one of the first leisure outfits I know in North America, Jack E30, on the podcast to talk about how it really helps productivity. It rewards the travelers as well. It gives them that little, maybe bit of growth or a unique experience. And therefore that makes it a good thing for organizations to add to their travel options. Where do you stand on that? And do you see good or bad examples of the use of leisure?
This is funny because this just makes me look old, but I'm like, oh God, bleisure. Are we calling it bleisure or bleisure in North America? I've also heard the term workations.
Okay.
Look, obviously, like we're in a day of these taglines for everything. So whatever, I don't mind, whatever floats your boat, doesn't bother me. But I think the concept itself, if you take away from it the fluffy term, it's a very powerful tool, I think, in business. It makes a lot of sense. If you think about, there's a number of benefits, I think, for a traveler and also the company. If someone's going on a work trip, a great example, if someone's going on a work trip and they've got to do a bunch of meetings and they're in London is a great example, right? Being able to then say afterwards, have that time to wind down, add on a little bit of annual leave to the end of it. One, you've subsidized your staff's trip, so they're getting a bonus essentially, so they can see that as a financial reward to them without actually costing the company anything because they've already paid for the work travel. They've got a subsidized trip, and it's also allowing them to have a breather after they've done something quite intense. You are promoting their wellness and you're acknowledging the fact that they need a break. I would think a lot of especially when you think about it from a financial perspective, in the climate we're currently in as well, people don't necessarily have the disposable income and the means to have that leisure aspect of their life. So being able to say, I have to travel for work anyway, I can tack this on to the end. Even if you bring your family along, you still saved in getting yourself there. And I think as well, you're there, you've already gotten through the jet lag, all of that kind of stuff. It's efficiency. Once they're back in the office as well, they're revitalized. There's just so many benefits to it. And it makes sense. People come back feeling a sense of appreciation, that they've been acknowledged, that they're working hard and that they should tack this on. But also people underestimate how much travel broadens your horizons and changes your perspectives. You come back invigorated in a way that you can't do when you're just at home, because getting out of our routine or getting out of our everyday allows us to have innovation, because we have to think outside the box. We have to come up with problem-solving skills when we're traveling. We have to use intuition for different things that in our everyday routine we're not doing. So the power of travel and bringing it back into your performance at work is very closely tied that people don't actually realize. And that's why people come back from a trip and all of a sudden they're back at work. And even though they've got the post-holiday blues in some respect, they also seem to have this, oh, something's going on. There's a spark. I thought of these ideas and I had a chance to stop and reflect. And all of these things are very powerful, right? And if we encourage that leisure, pleasure, vocation, whatever it is, it benefits everybody in the long run.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that in Inspired Travel, you have a program where you earn points or you earn perks from day one. Is that correct? And what kind of things do people appreciate and what kind of offerings do you have? There's something specific that's tied to pleasure that came up in my mind. Do you recommend like a specific downtime after trips, for instance? I think I saw something that I wanted to understand because I think it's a good practice. I have someone in my beta group who did a London, Brazil, Miami, LA, back to London in a 10-day stint. And he was letting me know that his boss said, and by the way, when you get back to London, don't come into the office straight away.
Yeah, I think that a really important one is to look at the days of the week when people are traveling and to ensure that if you're traveling back home on a Friday is always a very good idea because it gives them a restful weekend before they come back to work. So we often try, it's very hard to do that depending on meetings because meetings are generally in the work week. You're not normally having meetings on weekends. So the positive is that I would say if a staff member decides to extend on their own and stay until the Sunday and come home, then c'est la vie, they actually have to obviously accept the fact that they may be required at work on Monday. But for companies to make sure that like if they are giving them that rest time and just sparking that in their mind, it's always having these conversations with whoever the travel manager is and saying, please keep in mind that this is what they would have done in this period. So we need to make sure that they can actually get into work on a Monday. Also encouraging when people are traveling to be really mindful of having things like electrolytes and sipping on. People say have lots of fluids and whatnot, but I always travel with my little pods of electrolytes because they're just so important. It's just, you've got to think of it as if you are an athlete. It's the same kind of thing. You need rest, recovery. You need to make sure because it takes such a toll on you, even just that jet lag experience. Trying to travel at the right times with the sun is very important, or knowing what it means to eat at the right time. Even if they're giving you, this is why they, as you would know, why they'll give you breakfast on a plane, even though it's nighttime, because they're trying to get you into the time of the new area. We always say to people, just try and set your watch, or even proactively a few days before, if you're doing a really big trip like that, try and get your body into the zone, even if you shift your watch by a few hours and make yourself have dinner a few days before, maybe 3 hours earlier if you can, and try and go to bed earlier. I know most of us try that, but that doesn't necessarily work. But there's so many things. Another thing I'm really big on is that when I get back from a trip, or even when I arrive somewhere, I like to be very active. I swim a lot. And for me, it's getting straight into the pool as soon as I can because it just grounds me and it just refreshes me. So going and getting in and getting active as quickly as I can is really important, because as soon as I'm in that zone and I get the endorphins and the dopamine hit naturally and not from screens, I feel energized and I feel better. I always say to people, if you're landing somewhere, going into Europe from North America or Australia from North America, try to establish a routine straight away. I know it might not feel good to go for a walk or hit the water, but as soon as you do, you're going to be like, oh, I feel 10 times better. I actually got back last week from Australia and I had been sick in Australia, but because I got a flu, but I got back and I was quite jet lagged. So the next morning I just went straight to the pool and people were like, oh, what time did you arrive? And I'm like, oh, last night, but I know I need to be in here. And I just felt great. It got me straight back into my routine. And that is a huge one.
I love what you said there. It's one of my catch phrases, performance athlete travelers. It's a mindset and it's one that's invariably important for people who travel frequently, because if you see it as an athletic pursuit, you travel as an athletic pursuit, and you're able to prepare for it in that regard. Think of an athlete that's traveling maybe from Melbourne to Rome to compete in the Olympics. In order to be able to get to that podium, with the gold medal around their neck, they're going to have to be prepared, whether it's electrolyte, whether understanding their circadian rhythm, whether it's understanding their diet, and nutrition, their recovery, and the mindsets. All of these things come into play. And I believe that there is space for our community to take that on board wholesale and to prepare journeys on an ongoing basis, like a performance athlete traveler. A lot of the things that I've seen about inspired traveling lead me to believe that you're nudging your people or the people you work with in that direction.
Absolutely. I think you definitely have to take that approach, because also when you're in that whenever we're in a mindset with a goal like that, we can focus better about why we're doing it. If you look at travelers just being like, okay, I've got to get it's A to B, I'll suffer through the flight and then deal with it when I get there. That's just not the right approach to take. Even listening to motivating podcasts while you're traveling, helping you to get in the right mindset for whatever it is that you're doing. I think the fueling and the way you fuel your body is just so important, because a lot of our executive travelers, we have people that are on the road up to 80% of their life. This is a tough environment physically to be in. You have to be very disciplined in order to make sure that you're keeping yourself healthy. I think these frequent corporate travelers, this is what can lead to excessive burnout, is that people think they're just sitting on a plane. They're just relaxing on a plane. How hard can it be? But the toll it takes physically on your body, if you're not prepared for it, is exponential. This is why it leads to chronic disease and early chronic disease in corporate business people. This is a thing. This is a problem. And I think if you know you're going on a long haul flight, you should be prepared that morning, going to the gym, hitting the beach, whatever it is that you need to do. You should go into that feeling quite exhausted from your physical output of that day, so that you know what I mean? You should feel like you haven't just sat around necessarily that day in preparation for your long haul flight, and then fueling yourself with the food and the hydration that you have on that plane. It shouldn't just be like, how many drinks can I have on my flight to London? But it needs to be something that people take more seriously, especially for their staff, because it's so taxing on our bodies and it's easy to just ignore it.
I think the difference between the mindset that people come to travel with or have, that it's so glamorous and they want to believe that's all it's about without seeing the underbelly of how taxing, destructive it can be. I think the University of Surrey in the UK wrote a paper called The Darker Side of Hypermobility. And it talked about mobility across the spectrum, but in particular, frequent travelings, what it does to their health, what it does to their relationships, predisposition to diabetes and other chronic long-term diseases. These are real issues that if we bring the lens of wellness and well-being in the traveler context to the conversation, it benefits the person who's traveling and it also benefits the organization. It can't be understated. In my book, part of my discovery process and research process focused on the fact that if you go to the number of stewards and stewardesses, it's heavily weighted in favor of women. About 80% of them are women. And women's bodies are structured different to men's bodies. And the toll that this takes, whether it be autoimmune diseases of various kinds or fertility, these things really show up ravaging women in the airline industry. It makes for sad reading. That in and of itself is an indicator of what we need to do in terms of getting this conversation about how to remain healthy while you travel. And you're quite conscious of bringing women into inspired travel because you really care about your travelers. I highlight this idea of woman-centric focus because, if anything, I understand that inspired travel looks after its travelers, and therefore you potentially are dealing with women who are traveling quite a lot as well and need to have the understanding of how their wellness plays into them being able to perform and keep their health intact.
Yeah, I think women And men are different, as you say, when it comes to dealing with clients and having that sort of maternal instinct, so to speak. I know that's not necessarily across the board, but women lead emotionally. We are emotion first, and that's why when it comes to customer service, we are intuitive in that respect and very empathetic. And I think what people don't understand is that corporate travel requires a huge amount of empathy. And it seems ironic because you're dealing with these hard-hitting C-level executives, men and women. But what you realize is that it is so very important because people underestimate, particularly with executive male travelers or executive males in general, that there would be an emotional element to their lifestyle. It can look very structured. I travel, I go to the gym, I do this and I travel and I'm sealing deals and I'm shaking hands and I'm doing all this and the bravado's all there. But underneath it all, when they have a crisis at an airport, they're the ones that get the most irate, the most flying off the wall, the most angry. You need to be able to talk them off the ledge, calm them down, have a presence that to bring them back and ground them a little bit. And it said, I was reading something the other day that said majority of male responses to crisis situations and quick anger and getting frustrated, they deflect depression and emotion with anger. And you see that a lot with travelers when they will absolutely irrationally fly off the handle when they call the emergency phone. If they've got the right seasoned agent there, the agent knows it's not about them, but just being able to react and say, look, I understand where you're coming from, but please remember and do it in a strong enough way. I'm here to help you. So if you would like help, I need you to be calm right now so that I can help you. It will very quickly snap an extremely panicked traveler out of the mode that they're in. And I think this is where having experienced staff and people who understand people can make the world of difference. Because if you get a call center person who has no experience in this and doesn't know what they're doing, and they've got a CEO screaming at them saying, I need to be at this meeting and you need to get me there and it's all your fault. They're going to crumble. They're going to cry. They're going to hang up the phone. How often do people say I got hung up on by the customer service? Oh, easy. You got cut off. I'm not dealing with that guy. Yeah. So again, this comes back to if your staff understand what's going on, if they're seasoned, if they're well educated and also intuitive, they can understand these emotional needs that come with travel. People don't realize it's one of the most stressful and emotional situations to be in. When you're answering an emergency service for a corporate travel company where you're working with C-level executives, the level of anxiety is very high. These people answering the phone, they really need to know their stuff. They need to be confident and they also need to have a strong approach to it. And strong women are very good in that situation because we know how to cut it down. Never underestimate the power of that. I always see that in women that work for me. They just, when they're empowered, when they're educated properly, and when they know their stuff, there's nothing that's going to compete with that. And I think you will see the strongest of male executives crumble. And it's up to us to have humility and say, you know what, I've got this and we've got you. We've got umpteen texts we could show you on our emergency line of high-level executives writing and going, I don't know what I'd do without you. I don't know what I would have done. Thank you so much. I'm like, and I was so mean. But again, taking it not personally and learning how to do that, very hard thing to do because you'll see a lot of junior agents that end up in tears. There's a lot of emotions involved.
Looking to wrap up, not just yet, but I want to ask you about where you see the future of travel, considering what we've got going on. And then I'm going to ask you things about your personal wellness itinerary for when you travel and how you keep yourself healthy. Then I'm going to close out with our NoJetStress final question. Where do you see things heading? I mean, I guess I've picked a time to ask you this question with the tariffs in place coming from America and what that's going to have on global travel and transportation, etc.
Look, I think it's intimidating as to where AI is going to take us. I'm not going to lie. This is across all industries. I think that we all have to be aware and cognizant of what is going on and what steps we can put in place in our own businesses to ensure that we don't lose the human aspect. But particularly, I think the advantage that we have in an industry such as travel is that, like what we've just been discussing, it's such an emotional part of our life, and it requires a human at the end of the day. And I think that because we've gone so far the other way, I have no doubt, because I can see the increase, like I said, even in inbound leads for us, of people coming and saying, please help us. We actually need to talk to somebody. So, we can see that is the way it's going. And we've said, look, this is a portal. This sounds like a portal. You're not going to get what you want out of what our service can provide. And what we do is we simply put that client back onto a sales cycle for about 4 months. And we see in about 4 months' time, they come back because they say, oh my gosh, we use this portal and we're now in disarray. So because we're seeing that happen more and more, we can see it's shifting that way. It's just continuing on that trajectory. So the human touch is going to always be very important moving forward for the foreseeable future. I think now wellness is becoming a really core pillar in performance-based corporate travel. At the end of the day, if people don't start to understand how important this is, they will not get the results out of their staff. And I think people whether you like it or not, it's in our face enough that you can't ignore it. Those that are ignoring it are turning into the dinosaurs, right? Whether we like it or not, you have to move forward. I'm from a different generation, but I understand that I have to embrace the needs of the generation that we're living in. And because life keeps going, right? So I think that wellness is going to be a core pillar and we really need to focus on it. I also think like trends of biohacking tools and circadian lighting and personalized recovery amenities, all of these things are going to become extremely important. We need to know how to look after our bodies and look after ourselves, because otherwise the work won't be there to do because we won't be there.
Excellent. I switch between fantasizing and hallucinating the idea that will create the perfect trip where everything works on time. There are no queues at the airport. The baggage is loaded perfectly well. NDC and whatever that means is you can buy anything and everything wherever you want, but you'll then peer into the first class seat and the passenger will be missing. And the passenger will be missing because we didn't look after the wellness of the passenger in this whole equation. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we're trying to move people from A to B, not just so they can do the business, but they can do well and bring their best, as we've talked about in this conversation. And you only do that when we nurture and you look after, and make it one of the foundations. I'm so glad you made that point, because it's a corollary to the way I see people understanding the real need to put wellness at the center of their travelers and the constituencies that they build.
Yeah, I think what we will see is a shift from budget-only KPIs to traveler wellbeing metrics. And this is going to become very important. This is going to become a part of how we set up our budget for our company. I think the future is going to belong to organizations that optimize energy and not just cost, right? This is what we need to think about. You have to move forward. You have to diversify. You have to innovate. And this is what makes people successful. And yeah, we've got no choice. It's going to happen whether we like it or not. So it's those that embrace it that will be successful.
Amen to that. And amen to people looking out for wellness KPIs and really understanding the value that they hold in the whole process of things. I'm a firm believer that we're going to have toolkits for travelers in particular. Spacemen don't go up into space without theirs. You might be subsonic travel, but we still need toolkits. You mentioned electrolytes. Are there any other things that always with you when you travel?
Yeah, as I said, one of the big things for me is making sure that I've got a routine for my physical exercise. I travel a lot. And so people always say to me, oh, because they think I'm always on holiday. So they're always like, oh, it's okay, you're on holiday. And I'm like, no. Yes, I know conceptually maybe you think that because I'm checking out property or I'm here. but I'm not. And I have to constantly remind myself that this is my everyday. And so because of that, I need to have those routines. I think sticking to your program whilst you're traveling is very important. So if you do have a particular exercise regime, don't neglect it because you're traveling, and don't get yourself a break. There's so many properties now that actually are embracing exercise and wellness for corporate travelers as well, which is great. So there's even like certain brands where they will provide fitness gear for you at check-in, will be in your room, so that you can actually even just borrow fitness gear and hit the gym. It forces you to do it. If you set up the wellness package with W Hotels, for example, you'll have a wellness kit in your room. So even if you're kind of hard to push yourself to do it, it's sitting there telling you get up and go to the gym. Grounding walks and exercise is always very important. For me, as I said, I swim most every morning to clear my head. So for me, I'd continue that while I'm traveling. Hydration is a very big one. And I think hydration in the form of electrolytes, post-flight and pre-flight, getting yourself adequately hydrated. While I'm traveling, I also have a lot of like small travel products with me because that's really important to keep my skin feeling good. Because also another thing is like you get very dry and you can feel horrible when you travel. So being able to just refresh. There is nothing better than when you're on the plane and before you're landing, going and quick wash of the face, fix the hair, brush your teeth, floss your teeth, do those things. You sit back down and all of a sudden you're like, I feel great. It's like, don't not do that. And also just be prepared with like, take your favorite fluffy socks on the plane with you because that's a comfort. Anything that's a comfort, it's just nice to have something that makes you feel like, oh yeah, this is what I enjoy. And it makes me feel comfort is very important. But again, avoiding if you can, like at the beginning of the day, don't turn to your screen, especially while you're traveling. And maybe at the end of the night, if we can have that 30 minutes before sleep where we're not looking at a screen is obviously a good idea because we're always looking at them all the time. And natural light. So I'm always like, bring in the natural light wherever you're going. So as soon as you arrive there, the next morning, you should try and wake up to natural light. It will help with circadian rhythms as well. And I think that's very important. You have to be prepared. Like you say, have your little kit.
For someone who's traveled far and wide, any recommended travel destinations by wellness you could recommend?
I think most destinations now, you can find a wellness option, which I think is awesome. But one of my happy places is the Big Island of Hawaii. And the reason I say that is because there's something about it that just makes you feel grounded. And whether it's just the presence of the people, the smell in the air, the calmness. I'm a big fan of the rosewood in Hawaii and the Big Island because it's gone back to authentic Hawaii. They've just redeveloped this property and they've redeveloped it to be what it originally was 50 years ago. And it's just the most beautiful, immersive Hawaiian experience. It makes you actually feel like you're on a deserted island, but I'm 5 hours from home. So something like that. For some people, it's an actual spa resort and they like to have treatments and spa and meditation and that kind of stuff. Other people, it's just because I'm an outdoors person. So somewhere like Hawaii where I can snorkel, being with the fish and being with nature. I think it's a very personal preference. But if I'm home, also, I think you should never underestimate a staycation. People don't do that. They think, oh, I want to go somewhere exciting. But a staycation, if you just need to not travel, but you need a reset, the Fairmont Pacific Rim, which is 10 minutes from my house, is beautiful luxury accommodations, beautiful culinary options, and then a spa perched above the city. So it's like I'm transported away, but I'm 10 minutes from home. You never want to underestimate the power of just detaching yourself even within your own city, because we need to do that. We're always so busy in our own city that we don't take our city for what it is. I would say always thinking about doing that. It's so easy and it's so comfortable to be like, oh, I just had to drive down the road, but I still feel miles away because I've transported myself. If I'm in London, if I'm where you are, I'm flying straight to Mallorca because that's my happy place in Europe. Mallorca is absolutely beautiful, not in the busy young Brits areas, but in the quieter areas of Mallorca, in the countryside, you get this amazing sense of wellness and bliss just from your surroundings. So I'm big on the environment itself helps me to find my wellness rather than orchestrated wellness retreat, so to speak.
That leads me to the final question. What is your favorite destination around the world and why? And being an Aussie, you cannot pick home.
Okay. I have a favorite, but it's like, I have many that I love, but I think I always end up, my favorite place is the Maldives. And we normally go every year to the Maldives because it's our favorite place as a family. We absolutely love it. But I think it's because I'm such a water baby. That's like my whole thing. Right. So for me, because I'm so busy all the time and I travel a lot, I'm a person who I can't sit still. So if I go somewhere, I have to see everything. It drives my husband crazy. But I'm like, today we're going here, today we're going here. So I think what it does for me when I go to an island in the Maldives, I can't go anywhere. I can't explore. I don't have to see everything. And it forces me to just stop and reflect and truly rejuvenate. So if I'm talking a vacation, it's just the best. I get up at 6 a.m. there, I snorkel for an hour, then I come back and I have my day, snorkel again in the day. Like I'm just out there on that reef all the time. So I'm quite active, but I'm just relaxed. And I think it's probably my favorite because of that, because it's my rejuvenation. The list is endless for favorites.
That's the first time the Maldives has come up, believe it or not. But I love it. I haven't yet to go. I'm going to need to snorkel first. Thank you for sharing so much. I'm sure my listeners will have lots of value to take from that. It's been a pleasure speaking to you and understanding perspective and what Inspired Travel Group brings to the table. I hope you can clone yourselves globally.
Yes,
and so that we can all have this perspective of being human-centric and really understand how to serve people, because I believe we're all in this world serving someone or something, and having customer-centric people to help you when you travel, which is a very big feat because it's the unknown. You don't know what can happen, when it can happen, and we all need support at some time during that process. I'd like to thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and love to invite you to come back and spend some time with us again in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the NoJetStress Podcast. Remember, wherever you go, farewell.